The challenge the sun was setting over the desert landscape, casting a warm orange glow across the horizon. The wind howled through the barren, cracked earth, kicking up small dust storms that seemed to dance around the figure standing in the middle of the arena. Rayner wiped the sweat from his brow, his bare feet planted firmly on the ground. He was no stranger to fighting. In fact, fighting was all he had ever known. But nothing could have prepared him for this. The arena before him was unlike any battlefield he had encountered. The ground was scorched, marked with the remnants of past battles, and the air was thick with the scent of blood and sweat. Alien spectators watched from the stands, their eyes filled with anticipation. The alien warriors surrounding him were not the typical opponents he had fought before. They were larger, faster, and stronger than anything he had ever faced. Their eyes glowed with an unnatural intensity, their muscles bulging beneath their skin. They were predators hungry for battle, for blood. And they were about to test him. The woman, the one who had made him an offer he couldn't refuse, stood in the stands, watching intently. She was unlike the others. Her presence alone seemed to command respect. Her gaze was fixed on him, cold and calculating. She had promised him a chance to prove himself. But what she hadn't told him was the true price of that chance. Rayner took a deep breath, his heart pounding in his chest. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about something much larger than he could have imagined. The arena, the fight, the woman's words, all of it was a test. But for what? He didn't know if he was ready for this, but there was no turning back now. The horn sounded, and the battle began. His first opponent charged at him with terrifying speed, a massive alien warrior who looked like a mountain of muscle and fury. Rayner barely had time to react before the warrior swung a heavy fist toward his face. He ducked just in time, feeling the wind rush past his ear as the blow missed. His heart raced as adrenaline flooded his veins. This was no ordinary fight. This wasn't about showing strength or proving a point. It was about survival. And survival meant using everything he had learned from his life as a mechanic, everything from the patience to fix broken parts, to the quick thinking needed to solve problems under pressure. Rayner sidestepped the warrior's next strike, narrowly avoiding being crushed under the sheer weight of the blow. He wasn't fast enough to dodge everything. The warrior's fist connected with his side, sending a shock of pain through his body. Rayner gritted his teeth and forced himself to stay on his feet. There was no room for weakness here. Not when his life and his future were on the line. The alien warrior lunged at him again, faster this time. But Rayner was ready. He ducked low, using the momentum of the warrior's attack against him. With a quick twist, he grabbed the warrior's arm and threw him off balance, sending him crashing to the ground. The crowd roared in approval, but the fight wasn't over yet. Rayner barely had time to catch his breath before the next wave of opponents came charging toward him. 3 more alien warriors appeared from the shadows, all armed with bladed weapons. They circled him, their eyes flashing with hunger, and Rayner knew that this was his moment to prove himself. The first warrior lunged with a spear, aiming for his chest. Rayner ducked again, narrowly avoiding the deadly tip. With a quick movement, he grabbed the spear and used it to block the second warrior's strike, the blade sliding off the metal shaft. His heart was pounding now, the fear and excitement, mixing together in a cocktail of adrenaline. But he didn't have time to think. He had to move. He had to survive. Using the spear as an improvised weapon, Rayner swung it at the third warrior, knocking him back with a powerful blow to the chest. The crowd erupted into cheers, but Rayner didn't hear them. All he could focus on was the fight, the warriors, and the alien woman watching from the stands. With one last move, Rayner used the spear to thrust toward the first warrior's abdomen. He twisted, catching him off guard and sending him crashing. To the ground. One by one, the warriors fell. Raynor stood, his chest heaving, sweat dripping down his face. The battle was over. The woman in the stands slowly stood, her eyes locked on him. He could see the faintest hint of approval in her gaze, but it wasn't just admiration. It was recognition. She had been watching him, analyzing him, testing him. And now, as he stood victorious in the arena, he realized that this wasn't just about strength or skill. It was about something deeper, something she had seen in him from the moment they had met. "You've done well," she said softly, her voice carrying across the arena. Her words were like a challenge. But this was only the beginning. There is more to be tested. Raynor wiped the blood from his lip and looked up at her, his heart still racing. He had proven something to himself today, but what did it mean? Was this truly the chance for a future with her? Or was it just another test in a game he didn't understand? The alien woman's words echoed in his mind as the crowd cheered. He had survived, yes, but what came next? That was the real challenge. The unexpected praise. Raynor stood, breathing heavily, as the sounds of the cheering crowd echoed around him. The heat of the arena still clung to his skin, his muscles sore and aching from the brutal combat. His body had been pushed to its limits, but he had survived, barely. The alien warriors lay scattered around him, their massive bodies unmoving, the dust of the arena settling over them like a blanket dot. He wiped the sweat from his brow and surveyed the battlefield. It was over, at least for now. But what did it all mean? What did the woman in the stands see in him that made her choose him for this? What did she want from him? The crowd's cheers grew louder, but Raynor didn't hear them. His eyes were locked on the woman who had watched every second of the fight from the stands. She was tall, regal, and every bit the warrior she had promised to be. Her eyes met his, and for the first time, he saw something more than just a cold, calculating figure. There was a flicker of something softer, perhaps admiration, perhaps respect. She descended the steps of the stands, her presence commanding the attention of everyone around her. Even the victorious warriors from other battles stood in silent reverence as she approached. The moment she reached the arena floor, the crowd went silent. Raynor's heart pounded. Was she here to congratulate him? Or was there another test he had yet to face? She stopped just in front of him, her eyes still locked on his. For a moment, the world seemed to stop spinning. His mind was clouded with the adrenaline of the fight, the exhaustion of his body. But now, with her standing before him, everything felt impossibly still. "You fought well," she said, her voice a soft but powerful command. "You have strength, courage, and the skills of a warrior, but there is more you must prove." Raynor blinked, unsure whether to be relieved or worried. "I didn't expect any of this," he said, his voice hoarse from the battle. "I didn't come here to prove anything." She raised an eyebrow, clearly amused by his honesty. "No, you didn't, but you have proved something nonetheless. You survived. You fought with a determination that even my people would respect." He shook his head. "That's not what I'm here for. I didn't fight for recognition. I just wanted to get through it." She stepped closer, her gaze not leaving his. "And yet, your will to survive is exactly what makes you worthy of being tested. You see, Raynor, there is more at stake here than just winning a battle. I've watched many fight, many die. But you—" She paused, her eyes glinting with something deeper, something he couldn't place. "You are different." The weight of her words settled over him like a heavy cloak. "Different? What do you mean?" She smiled, though it was a rare expression for someone like her. "You fight not for power, not for glory, but for something deeper. It is not often that I see that in someone from your species. Most fight out of pride, out of a need for control. You fight because you refuse to be beaten, because you have something worth fighting for. Raynor felt a wave of confusion. He had never considered his actions in such a way. He wasn't special. He was just a mechanic who had found himself trapped in a world far beyond his understanding. But now, standing before this woman, this alien warrior, he realized that his survival meant something more. He wasn't just fighting for himself. He was fighting for something greater, even if he didn't fully know what it was yet. "Why me?" he asked, his voice low. "There must be others, more qualified, more skilled." The weight of her words settled over him like a heavy cloak. "Different? What do you mean?" She smiled, though it was a rare expression for someone like her. "You fight not for power, not for glory, but for something deeper. It is not often that I see that in someone from your species. Most fight out of pride, out of a need for control. You fight because you refuse to be beaten, because you have something worth fighting for." Raynor felt a wave of confusion. He had never considered his actions in such a way. He wasn't special. He was just a mechanic who had found himself trapped in a world far beyond his understanding. But now, standing before this woman, this alien warrior, he realized that his survival meant something more. He wasn't just fighting for himself. He was fighting for something greater, even if he didn't fully know what it was yet. "Why me?" he asked, his voice low. "There must be others, more qualified, more skilled." She nodded slowly, her eyes softening for the briefest moment. "There are many skilled warriors, but none of them have what you have: humanity. You are untainted by the hunger for power, by the desire for dominance. That makes you unique, and it is why you will succeed where others will fail." Raynor was quiet, the weight of her words pressing on him. The arena had felt like a test away to prove himself, to prove he belonged. But now he understood that the real test was far more than just physical strength. This wasn't just about fighting. This was about surviving in a world where survival was more than a simple instinct. It was a choice, a commitment to something greater than himself. She took another step closer, her presence now almost overwhelming. "I wish you were my husband," she said, the words almost slipping out like a quiet confession. Raynor's heart skipped a beat, his confusion deepening. "What do you mean by that?" His voice was uncertain, unsure whether to laugh or be taken aback. Her gaze softened, a rare vulnerability flickering in her eyes. "In my culture, a husband is not just a partner. He is someone who shares the same purpose, the same strength, the same will to survive. I see in you the potential to lead, to fight, not just for power, but for something more, a future. You are not like the others I have seen. You fight because you believe in something." Raynor couldn't quite wrap his mind around her words. It was flattering, yes, but it felt like too much too quickly. He had no desire to be a leader, to be thrust into something he didn't understand. He was just trying to survive. But as he looked into her eyes, he couldn't deny the truth of what she said. There was something about her that made him feel as though he had a purpose, something that went beyond the fight, beyond the arena. "I don't know what to say," Raynor admitted, his heart racing. She smiled again, this time with a hint of warmth. "You don't have to say anything, Raynor. You've already proven everything you need to. The next step is for you to decide if you're ready to embrace what comes next." As she turned to leave, Raynor was left standing in the arena, the weight of her words hanging in the air like a heavy cloud. The fight had been the easy part. The real challenge, the one that would define everything, was just beginning. This part deepens the relationship between Raynor and the alien warrior woman, building the tension and curiosity about their potential future. It also introduces a new layer of conflict, as Raynor now has to decide whether to embrace the power and responsibility she's offering him. Let me know if you'd like to continue. The offer, the sounds of the cheering crowd still echoed in Raynor's ears as he stood in the arena, his body sore and aching. The adrenaline of the fight had faded, but the weight of what had just transpired hung heavily in his chest. He had faced the toughest warriors he had ever seen, and against all odds, he had survived. But now, standing there, covered in sweat and dirt, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of something far bigger than himself. The alien woman had given him something he hadn't expected: respect, and with it, an offer, a chance to join her in something much greater than his simple existence as a mechanic. He still didn't fully understand what she meant, but the intensity in her eyes when she spoke left no room for doubt. She had seen something in him, something that went beyond just survival. Rayner wiped the blood from his lip as he walked out of the arena, his mind racing. The crowd was dispersing, but his thoughts were far away, lost in the mystery of what had just happened. He had never intended to get caught up in anything like this. He was just a man from a backwater planet, someone who fixed machines and tried to get by. But now he found himself in a situation where survival wasn't enough. It was about more than just living. It was about leading, about making choices that would shape the future. He found himself back at the small, deserted area, near the edge of the arena where she had first approached him. The woman was waiting for him there, her figure standing tall and unwavering against the dimming light of the desert sky. Her eyes locked onto his the moment he arrived, and she didn't waste any time in speaking. "You've proven yourself in battle," she said, her voice carrying the weight of the words. "But that was only a test. Now it's time for you to decide what comes next." Rayner felt his pulse quicken. He knew what she was talking about. This wasn't just about the fight. It was about what came after. What did she want from him? What did he have to offer? "I don't know if I'm ready for any of this," Rayner admitted, his voice tense with the uncertainty that had been building since the moment she first spoke to him. "I'm just a mechanic. I don't belong in this world." She stepped closer, her gaze unyielding. "You are more than a mechanic, Rayner. You have something others don't: humanity. You fight not for power, but for something deeper. That is why I've chosen you." The words hit him harder than he expected. He had always considered himself just an average man, a worker with no real importance. But now, here she was, telling him that something about him was special, something that made him worthy of a chance at greatness. She continued, her tone becoming softer but more intense. "My people, we value strength, not just in the body, but in the spirit. You've shown both. But strength alone is not enough. You need to learn to lead, to think beyond yourself. That is why I'm offering you this." Rayner raised an eyebrow, confusion evident on his face. "Offering me what, exactly?" "A chance to join me," she replied. "Not just as a fighter, but as a partner. To stand by my side and help shape the future of my people. I need someone who understands what it means to fight for something greater than power. Someone who can see beyond violence and chaos. Someone like you." Rayner stared at her, the weight of her words settling on his shoulders. What was she asking? To become a leader? To join her in something that felt completely beyond his understanding? He was just a man from a forgotten world. He had never asked for any of this. "I'm not sure I'm the right person for this," he said, his voice shaky. "I've spent my life fixing things, machines, ships, but I've never led anything. I don't even know if I'm cut out for this." She smiled, but there was no humor in it, just understanding. "That is why I'm offering you this chance, Rayner. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to know everything. You just have to be willing to learn, to grow. And together, we can change the course of everything." The silence between them stretched on, but Rayner couldn't shake the feeling that this was the moment that would define everything. The weight of her offer, the responsibility it carried, was daunting. He had never imagined his life would turn out like this. He was a mechanic, not a leader. He wasn't someone who was supposed to change the future of an entire people. But there was something about her, something in the way she looked at him, that made him believe he might actually have a chance at this. "I don't know if I'm ready," he said quietly. "But if this is what it takes to protect my people, to make a difference, then maybe I'm willing to try." The woman's eyes softened for a moment, and she nodded, as if she had been expecting this answer all along. "That is all I ask, Raynor. You don't need to be ready. You need to be willing to take the first step." With that, she turned and motioned for him to follow her. "Come, I will show you the path. It begins now." Raynor stood still for a moment, his heart pounding in his chest. He had made a choice, and whether he was ready or not, his life had just changed forever. This part highlights Raynor's internal conflict as he grapples with the weight of the alien woman's offer. It sets up his decision to embrace a new life, moving away from his simple existence into something far more complex. Let me know if you'd like to continue. Training for the arena Raynor followed the alien woman, his heart still racing from the decision he had just made. The weight of her offer hung heavily in the air, and despite the determination growing within him, doubt still lingered. He was just a mechanic. He had never asked for a life of power, of leadership. Yet here he was, stepping into a world he couldn't fully understand, walking beside the very woman who had tested him. And now, it seemed, she intended to shape him into something far greater than he ever imagined. The spaceport around them was quiet now, the last echoes of the arenas, cheers fading as they made their way deeper into the complex. Raynor could feel his body's aches from the fight, the cuts and bruises he had barely noticed in the heat of battle now making themselves known. But it wasn't the pain that held his attention. It was her, the warrior woman, moving effortlessly through the maze of corridors, leading him somewhere. As they walked, the woman spoke. "The arena was only the first step, Raynor. You proved that you have the strength and the will to fight. But this is a different kind of battle. This is a battle for your mind, for your understanding of our ways. The challenges ahead will not be solved by brute force alone." Raynor nodded, but the confusion was still written all over his face. He wasn't sure if he was ready for what she was offering, let alone what lay ahead. "What exactly do you want me to do?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "I don't understand. I'm just a human mechanic. I don't know anything about ... politics or leadership." She stopped walking and turned to face him. "Exactly," she said with a small smile. "That is why I chose you. Your mind is not clouded by the desire for power. You see things differently. That's what I need." She motioned for him to follow again. "But first you must learn what it means to lead, what it means to think not just for yourself, but for those who depend on you." They reached a large, high-tech door at the end of the hall, one Raynor hadn't seen before. The door opened with a soft hum, revealing a large, open training facility filled with advanced equipment and warriors sparring in various stages of combat. The air was thick with the sounds of clashing weapons, grunts of exertion, and the quiet murmurs of soldiers receiving instructions. This was a world of strategy, of strength, but also of knowledge. Raynor's breath caught as he stepped into the room. The warriors he saw training weren't just powerful, they were disciplined, methodical. They moved with a kind of precision that made Raynor's previous combat seem clumsy in comparison. "This is where you will begin," she said, her voice calm but filled with an undeniable authority. "Here you will learn more than how to fight. You will learn how to think, how to lead. You will train your mind and your body." One of the instructors, a tall alien man with deep red skin and a stern face, approached them. He was carrying a large set of weapons, his eyes scanning Raynor as though assessing him in an instant. "This is Commander Kalek," the woman introduced. "He will be your primary instructor." He will teach you everything you need to know. Calyx. Eyes narrowed slightly as he examined Raynor. You're not like the others, he muttered, almost to himself. But I will teach you. Raynor stood a little straighter, trying not to let the weight of Calyx's gaze unnerve him. He had been through enough battles to know how to face a challenge head-on, but this was different. This wasn't just about survival. This was about understanding a whole new way of living, thinking, fighting. Calyx handed Raynor a set of basic weapons, lightweight and designed for training. We will begin with combat drills. You have strength, but you will need more than that to survive here. You will need strategy, timing, and adaptability. Raynor took the weapons, feeling their unfamiliar weight in his hands. His mind flashed back to his simple life, his small workshop, the machines he fixed, the quiet days spent under the fading sun of his planet. He had never imagined he would be in a place like this, surrounded by the best fighters in the galaxy. As Calyx started to guide him through the first set of drills, Raynor's focus sharpened. There was a rhythm to the movements, flowing, controlled, deliberate. It wasn't just about fighting. It was about reading your opponent, understanding the battlefield, and using your surroundings to your advantage. Raynor had always been quick to fix a problem when it appeared, but this was a different kind of problem. It was a battle of the mind and body, combined. Hours passed in a blur, as Raynor was taught a variety of fighting techniques. But what struck him most was the focus on control. The control over his own body. Yes, but more importantly, the control over his thoughts. He wasn't just learning how to fight. He was learning how to make decisions in the heat of battle, to stay calm, to think beyond just the immediate moment. By the time the sun had set, Raynor's body was sore, his muscles screaming with exhaustion. But there was something else in him, something that wasn't there when he first entered this world. He had learned something today, something he couldn't name yet, but he knew it was important. As he wiped the sweat from his forehead, the alien woman appeared again, watching him from the side of the training arena. She nodded slowly as she observed him. You've made progress, she said, her voice filled with a quiet approval. The next step will be harder. But you're not here to be a warrior, Raynor. You're here to be something more. Raynor looked at her, still trying to make sense of the whirlwind his life had become. I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I can be what you want me to be. The woman's gaze softened. You already are, Raynor. You just don't know it yet. But you will, with time. Raynor's mind was reeling. He wasn't. Sure, he was ready for whatever she had planned for him. But the training, the lessons, it was all starting to make sense. He wasn't just fighting for survival anymore. He was fighting for a future. A future that, for better or worse, depended on the choices he made from here on out. And as he stood there, sweaty and exhausted, he realized something. This wasn't just about him anymore. It wasn't just about proving he could survive. It was about leading, about shaping a destiny far larger than he could have ever imagined. This part shows Raynor's intense training, emphasizing both physical and mental growth. His transformation into someone capable of leadership is underway, though there's still much to learn. Let me know if you'd like to continue. The arena, the days that followed, were a blur. Raynor's body and mind were pushed to their limits. Every waking hour was filled with intense training, drills, and strategies that challenged him in ways he never thought possible. His muscles burned from the endless combat exercises. His mind strained from the complex tactics Calyx and the woman taught him. But as much as his body ached, he began to feel something changing deep inside him. He wasn't just learning how to fight anymore. He was learning how to think like a leader, to see the battlefield from a perspective he had never considered. The arena loomed over him like a dark promise. This was the next step. The woman had told him he wasn't here just to fight. He wasn't here to gain fame or power. He was here to prove something much bigger than that, to prove that humanity could stand toe-to-toe with the galaxy's greatest warriors. Today, the challenge would be unlike anything Raynor had faced so far. He had trained for months, but he couldn't help but feel a rush of anxiety settle in his stomach. The stakes had never been higher. This was more than just a fight. It was the moment that would define him, the test that would prove whether he was truly capable of leading. As he walked toward the arena, his mind raced. What if he wasn't good enough? What if the alien woman had been wrong about him? What if he failed, and his people were left to face the consequences of his inability to step up? The alien woman's words from earlier echoed in his mind. You already are, Raynor. You just don't know it yet. The reminder did little to calm his nerves, but he tried to hold on to the thought as he entered the arena. The crowd's roar hit him first, the thunderous cheer of alien warriors and spectators packed into the stands, their eyes fixed on him. Raynor could feel their gaze like a heavy weight on his shoulders. The arena was a circular pit of sand, surrounded by high walls. The ground was stained with the remnants of previous battles. He wasn't just here to fight. He was here to show the galaxy that humanity was more than just an afterthought, more than just a species that could be ignored. His opponent stood across from him, a hulking alien with thick, green skin, rippling muscles, and a savage glare that could freeze a lesser man in his tracks. The alien warrior held a massive blade, its sharp edge gleaming in the harsh light. Raynor, on the other hand, was armed with nothing but his bare hands. Survive, and you will earn your place, the alien woman had said, her voice unwavering. She was watching from the stands, her eyes locked on him, waiting for him to prove himself. Raynor exhaled slowly, his body coiled, ready for the fight. He had learned everything he could in the last few months. He had honed his instincts, his skills, and his mind. But the truth was, he still wasn't sure if he was ready for this. He was a mechanic, not a soldier, not a warrior. But now, as he faced his opponent in the arena, he realized that he had no choice. He had to be more than what he had been. The horn sounded, signaling the start of the match. The alien warrior charged, moving with terrifying speed. Raynor had only a moment to react. His instincts kicked in, and he ducked just as the massive blade swung through the air, missing him by inches. The force of the strike created a gust of wind, pushing him back. He barely kept his footing as the alien warrior advanced again, swinging the blade in a wide arc. Raynor didn't have the luxury of time. He knew he couldn't outrun the aliens. Strength. He needed to outsmart him, use the environment to his advantage. As the alien lunged forward once more, Raynor ducked and rolled, narrowly avoiding the next strike. He landed on his feet and grabbed the nearby weapon rack, tossing a small, sharpened blade into his hand just in time to block the next blow. The alien warrior roared in frustration, his eyes blazing with anger as he swung again. But Raynor was faster now. He had learned to read the warrior's movements, to anticipate his next move. With a quick sidestep, Raynor landed a blow to the alien side, using the momentum of the strike to push the warrior off balance. The crowd gasped in shock. The alien staggered, but recovered quickly, his rage boiling over. He swung his blade again, this time faster, with a deadly precision that would have cut Raynor in half if he wasn't careful. Raynor blocked the strike with the blade in his hand, the force of it vibrating through his arms, but he didn't falter. He was learning to hold his ground. The fight continued, back and forth, each strike a test of endurance and strategy. Raynor was no longer just a man fighting to survive. He was beginning to understand what the woman had meant. He wasn't just fighting for himself. He was fighting for something bigger. Each strike, each moment of pain, was pushing him toward something more, something he couldn't see yet, but knew was waiting for him on the other side. Finally, with one last move, Raynor saw his opening. As the alien warrior's blade came down in a powerful swing, Raynor ducked under it, using his opponent's own momentum to twist him off balance. In one fluid motion, Raynor disarmed the warrior, sending the blade flying across the arena. With a quick move, he grabbed the alien by the arm and slammed him to the ground. The crowd went silent for a moment, as if holding their breath. Then, as the alien warrior lay defeated in the sand, the arena erupted in applause. Raynor stood over his fallen opponent, panting and exhausted. His body was covered in cuts and bruises, but he had done it. He had won. Not through strength alone, but through strategy, through the will to survive. From the stands, the alien woman stood, her eyes fixed on him. This was the moment she had been waiting for, the moment he proved himself, not just as a fighter, but as someone capable of leading. The look in her eyes was unreadable, but Raynor could see the faintest hint of respect in her gaze. For the first time since entering the arena, Raynor felt a spark of something deeper. This wasn't just about him anymore. It was about what he could do for the galaxy, about what humanity could become. The woman's voice rang out across the arena, her words carrying the weight of the moment. "Raynor," she called, her voice filled with approval. "You have passed the test. But this is only the beginning." Raynor's heart pounded in his chest. He had won the battle, but the real fight was just beginning. This part deepens Raynor's growth as a fighter and leader, showing that he's more than just a survivor. He's beginning to understand what it means to be a leader. His victory in the arena is not just a physical triumph, but an emotional turning point in his journey. Let me know if you want to continue. The turning point, the roar of the crowd, faded into the background as Raynor stood victorious in the arena. His muscles ached, his body bruised and bloodied, but there was no time to rest. The alien woman's eyes were locked on him, and her gaze was like a fire that seared through his chest, leaving an unfamiliar feeling in its wake. It was a mixture of respect, approval, and something else, a challenge. For a brief moment, Raynor allowed himself to take a deep breath. He had made it. Against all odds, he had survived the arena. But this fight wasn't just a physical battle. It was a test of his character, his ability to stand out among warriors, far stronger and more skilled than he could ever be. He had been chosen, not because of his strength, but because of something deeper, something the alien woman had seen in him. The question now was, what would he do with this opportunity? As he turned to face her, she began to walk toward him, her every step measured and graceful. The arena behind them was silent now, as if holding its breath. The alien warriors, who had fought beside him and against him, stood still, watching him with a mixture of admiration and caution. It was as though the very atmosphere had shifted, and Raynor was no longer just a mechanic from a backwater planet. He was something more. "You've proven yourself, Raynor," the woman said, her voice firm yet tinged with something softer. "But now the real test begins." Raynor swallowed hard. He hadn't expected this. The battle had been brutal, but he had fought and won. What else could there be? He had proven he could survive in the arena, but was that really enough? "You're not here just to fight," she continued, her gaze piercing through him. "You're here because your survival means something. It means something to them, to the future of your people. You will lead them, Raynor, not just through strength, but through understanding." Raynor took a step forward, his voice steady but filled with doubt. "I'm not a leader. I've never been one. I've spent my life fixing things, not leading them." The woman studied him for a moment, as if assessing his worth. Then she smiled faintly, her eyes gleaming with something almost like respect. "That's exactly why I chose you. You're not blinded by the hunger for power. You don't see yourself as someone destined to rule. That is why you're capable of leading. You see things differently. And that's what makes you dangerous. Raynor's stomach twisted with unease. He wasn't sure he liked being called dangerous. He wasn't a warrior. He was a man with a simple goal: survival. But this was something he couldn't walk away from. Not anymore. You've already taken the first step by surviving the arena, she said, her voice softer now. But what comes next will be harder. The galaxy is a fractured place, Raynor. Power is fleeting, and chaos rules in the spaces between. You'll need more than just combat skills. You'll need strategy, wisdom, and the ability to lead without losing yourself. Raynor took a deep breath, trying to center himself. The pressure of her words pressed down on him, but something inside of him stirred. He wasn't sure what this new role would require of him, but for the first time, he felt like he might actually have a chance to make a difference. The stakes were higher than he ever imagined, but he couldn't back down. Not now, not after everything that had led him here. Do you believe in the future of your people, Raynor? She asked, her voice cutting through his thoughts. Do you believe they have the strength to survive the coming storm? Raynor's heart raced as the weight of the question settled over him. He had never thought about his people beyond the simple struggles of daily life, the small battles of survival. But now, standing here, in a foreign world full of alien warriors, he realized something. Humanity wasn't just about surviving. It was about thriving. It was about fighting not just for oneself, but for a future that had yet to be written. Yes, he said, his voice gaining strength. I believe they can survive. I believe humanity has more to offer than anyone realizes. The woman's eyes softened, a glint of pride flashing across her face. Then it's time to begin, Raynor. The true war is not fought in the arena. It's fought in the minds of those who will shape the galaxy's future. And you, human, will be one of the ones who shapes it. She turned and motioned for him to follow. Come, I'll show you the next step. You've proven yourself here, but the real challenges lie ahead. The galaxy will not wait for you to decide. It's time to lead. Raynor followed her, the weight of her words settling deep within him. He wasn't sure what the future held, but he was certain of one thing. He couldn't walk away from this. He had made a choice, and now it was time to see it through. The woman had seen something in him, something that could change the fate of humanity, and he had to honor that trust. No matter where it would lead Dot as they walked deeper into the complex, Raynor couldn't help but feel the stirrings of something. Within him, a sense of purpose he had never felt before. The arena had been the beginning, but this was just the start of something much greater. The true fight was about to begin. A new beginning. The walls of the alien facility seemed to close in around Raynor as he followed the woman through a maze of corridors. His mind was still reeling from everything he had just experienced: the arena, the tests, the lessons. Every step he took felt like it carried the weight of the future on his shoulders. He had agreed to her offer, but now the reality of it was starting to hit him harder than any battle he had ever fought. They entered a large chamber, filled with advanced equipment and strange alien technologies that Raynor couldn't even begin to understand. The air smelled faintly of metal and ozone, and the hum of machinery filled the room. He had seen alien technology before, but nothing like this. This was something different, something powerful. The woman turned to him, her gaze steady. This is where it begins, Raynor, she said. This is where you'll learn what it means to lead. It won't be easy. In fact, it will be harder than anything you've done before. Raynor swallowed. His hands were still shaking from the fight, and the weight of her words pressed down on him like 1,000 tons of stone. But there was no turning back now. He had made his choice. He had agreed to this journey, to this fight for humanity's future. I'm ready, he said, though he didn't quite believe the words as they left his lips. He wasn't sure if anyone could ever truly be ready for something like this. The woman's eyes softened just a fraction. You will be, in time. But for now, you need to understand one thing. She stepped forward, her voice low and intense. Leadership is not about power. It's not about domination. It's about understanding. It's about knowing when to fight and when to negotiate. When to make hard decisions and when to show mercy. You will have to do both, Raynor. And it will test you like nothing before. Raynor nodded, taking in her words. The weight of responsibility was heavy, but there was something else growing inside him, a spark, a desire to protect, to lead. He wasn't just fighting for himself anymore. He was fighting for something bigger, for humanity's future, for the possibility of something better. The woman turned toward the holographic displays on the walls, which flickered with images of the galaxy planets, star systems, and regions he had never seen. She tapped a few keys, and the map expanded to show distant galaxies, unknown alien races, and strategic positions. This is the galaxy you will learn to navigate. Raynor, she said, her voice calm and matter-of-fact. It's not a place for the weak. The purifiers aren't the only threat. There are factions, political powers, and ancient forces at play. Your people have been left behind, and now you're going to change that. But first, you need to understand the landscape. Raynor stepped forward, looking over the map. There were so many unknowns, so many variables, and it seemed impossible that one person could understand all of this, let alone lead humanity through it. But the woman's words lingered in his mind. You are capable of this. He had to believe it. Where do we start? Raynor asked, his voice steady now, more confident than it had been before. The woman turned to him, her expression serious. The first step is to understand that this is not a battle fought with weapons. This is a battle fought with minds, with alliances, with influence. The arena was only the beginning, Raynor. Now you will learn to fight the battles that truly matter, battles of the mind, of diplomacy, and of strategy. She motioned to the display, and it shifted, showing images of various alien species, some peaceful, some warring, some neutral. Each of these factions has its own agenda, its own way of thinking. You will need to understand them, negotiate with them, and sometimes fight them. You must become a master of strategy. Raynor felt the weight of what she was saying. This wasn't just about brute strength or survival anymore. This was about leading, about shaping the future of humanity and the galaxy. It was about creating alliances, making hard decisions, and knowing when to strike and when to compromise. The woman's voice softened, almost imperceptibly. But don't mistake this for something easy. There will be sacrifices, Raynor. People will die, decisions will haunt you, and not everyone will understand your choices. Leadership is a lonely road. Raynor met her gaze, his heart steady now. He had made the decision to follow this path, to take on the mantle of leadership, no matter how difficult it would be. I understand, he said quietly. I won't let humanity fall. I won't let them down. The woman nodded, her expression unreadable, but there was something in her eyes, perhaps a flicker of approval. Then it begins now. You'll need to learn how to lead in the shadows, how to manipulate power without ever drawing a sword. A galaxy is watching, and it will either respect you or destroy you. Raynor stood taller, his resolve hardening. He wasn't just a mechanic anymore. He wasn't just a man who had survived the arena. He was someone who would lead, who would fight not just for survival, but for the future of humanity. And with that thought in his mind, the holographic displays flickered, showing new challenges, new opportunities. The path ahead was uncertain, filled with dangers and choices he couldn't yet see. But one thing was clear. He was no longer just a player in someone else's game. He was the one who would shape the future. Let's begin, Rayner said, his voice full of conviction. The woman nodded, her lips curling into a small smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. It begins now. This part marks Rayner's full acceptance of his role and responsibility. He understands the weight of leadership and the challenges ahead, setting the stage for the more strategic and diplomatic challenges that lie ahead. Let me know if you'd like to continue.